Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, North Coast Congressman Jared Huffman joins us in studio to talk about the Klamath River, Trump's latest indictment, and the plight of missing Native women. Also, KEET's own Eric Black reports on how the Humboldt Wind Energy Project could spark a blue-collar revival. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. Top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. We've got a good full show for you tonight, starting with our local congressman's reaction to the most recent indictment of Donald Trump, among other issues. Given our time constraints, we'll skip the niceties and get right to the news buffet. In the morning, yesterday, I joined Congressman Huffman as he previewed the 30,000 salmon exhibit at the Morris Graves Museum of Art. It opens to the public Saturday night. The installation, put together by local kids in 2004, uses 30,000 individual pieces of art hung on monofilament lines to create a three-dimensional salmon hanging in space. The creation was brought out of storage and painstakingly reassembled to celebrate the ongoing removal of 4 dams from the Klamath River.
It's a fun exhibit to see. It's actually opening up to the public starting Saturday, so anyone can walk in downtown Eureka and take a look. But I think it's really powerful that this exhibit that kind of came into existence in a really dark time when we had that terrible mass fish kill in the Klamath back in 2002, in the aftermath of that, that it basically was put away and put in this artist's attic for all these years. And here we are finally physically removing dams on the Klamath, bringing this river back to life. What a great moment to reassemble this exhibit for like a final tour. This is going to be the last appearance, I believe, for this exhibit, but in a much more hopeful way than the last time people saw it.
Yeah, I was speaking with Jemima Carr from the museum, and she was talking about how volunteers and people spent hours. Everything's hung on a monofilament line. Yeah. So they spent time to, untangle it and make sure it was all presented beautifully, and it is. And what's really remarkable about it is that each of the individual pieces can stand on its own. It's like it's a kid's vision of what the the fish kill meant, but also what the environment means, and it was really impactful. So.
Yeah, each individual piece often includes a note from a child back then. I hope the salmon come back, something like that. And each of these kids, now has probably a family of their own at this point.
They can bring their kids in to watch it and see it. And there's, 30,000 salmon and 30,000 individual pieces of art that make up the display. So I encourage anyone, if you get a chance, to definitely go check it out. Now, of course, I have to ask you about the Donald Trump indictment that just came down. A lot of us have been waiting for this to happen and wondered in the initial months after the January 6th insurrection and riots whether this day would ever come. Since the appointment of Jack Smith as special counsel, it seems like things, sped up, and we've gotten to this point rather quickly. It remains to be seen whether a trial will happen before the election or how that's going to work out. But let me get your gut level reaction to the indictment and then also to the question of whether this needs to be televised.
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion on whether it needs to be televised, but I think it needs to be a serious and sober criminal proceeding, just like any other American would have the right to, as they were presented with charges. To me, the most important aspect to this, you're going to hear charges from Trump's allies that there's a two-tier system of justice. It's actually just the opposite. If a person like Donald Trump were to be allowed to do all of these things that he did without criminal accountability, that would be a two-tier system of justice. So to me, this is a wonderful affirmation of the rule of law, however it comes out. And I'm not going to be one of those that, jump to the conclusion I want to see and say lock him up, or, I'm not approaching this from a score-settling or partisan vindictive perspective. I just like the rule of law. It's super important. It's a bedrock of our democracy, and it needs to play out however it would play out if any other American were facing these charges.
Yeah. How complicated could it get with, him running for president, and do you think that puts pressure on the court to get this expedited as quickly as possible?
It should be expedited to the extent that any other trial like this would be expedited. I just don't think there should be any special treatment or special consideration. And it's really hard to do when you've got, this personality and you've got millions of Americans kind of hanging on his every word, and he's so over the top in everything he says and does, even while facing trial. I mean, no one else publicly attacks judges and prosecutors if they're facing charges like this.
Yeah.
So everything that they do, both the prosecutors and the judges, are going to be under a microscope. And I truly believe the best path forward is to just approach this as they would any other case.
I wish they would have started with a mugshot.
Well,
The fact that you accept something like that, I mean, I've had my mugshot in the paper.
Why should he have an exception?
Why should he have
right?
an exception?
I agree with you.
Because he was the president.
Yeah.
I mean,
not that I want to see more pictures of Donald Trump.
No,
but,
me either. But I mean, you know, I think that that level of accountability means something, and I think it's part of the process of, like, you know, going through the justice system. And if you can skip that, then what else are you skipping? I guess is my concern. So I have a lot more questions. We'll just go through them.
Okay.
You've recently asked the GAO to examine the inequitable justice system that tribal nations often suffer through. And apparently this happens particularly in states that have civil and criminal jurisdiction over the tribes. California is one of those.
Yes, it is.
Alaska, Minnesota, Nebraska, Oregon, and Wisconsin. Can you give our viewers and me, because I was sort of unfamiliar with this, what some context for what this issue is about? And were you satisfied with the response that you got from the GAO, or have you received one yet?
Yeah, so what this is about, and this is something I hear up and down my district because I represent a lot of tribes.
Yeah.
Because the federal government, under a law called PL 280, basically assigned California law enforcement responsibility over tribes, tribes have not gotten the they haven't had the level of support. They don't have the capacity to do it themselves. They got to jump through a lot of hoops if they want to assume law enforcement responsibility over their tribal lands.
Yeah.
And it's not a priority for a lot of state and local law enforcement authorities. They've got other needs that tend to take precedence.
Yeah.
So tribes are losing out in PL 280 states, and where this issue really comes to a head is what we call the MMIP crisis, missing and murdered indigenous people.
That was my next question, actually.
Yeah, so that's really what led me to feel like I need to get involved in reviewing Public Law 280, in getting the GAO to finally do a serious analysis of what's working and what's not. I certainly hear about a lot of it that's not working.
Sure.
And then once we get that back, they have responded and they will be doing this for the first time. Once we get that back, we can look at some statutory changes and improvements to this law.
Yeah. Now, when you mentioned the MMIW, it's missing and murdered indigenous women and girls is the
or
the
MMIP people sometimes.
Okay.
It's sort of alternatively referred to in all of those ways.
Yeah. Humboldt County is like the ground zero for this issue in a lot of ways. We have a high number of people that have been missing.
Yeah.
Some of those cases have been high profile. I mean, you're in Congress, given that the relationship of the tribal governments is with the federal government in a lot of instances, is there anything that the federal government should be doing more of to get to the bottom of this issue? I mean, it's a matter of setting priorities for the local jurisdictions, but what can be done?
There's a lot, and it's almost overwhelming to sort of figure out where to even start. In terms of federal resources dedicated to this kind of law enforcement and accountability, you know how big the state of California is. You know how many tribes and tribe members we have. There is one individual at the Bureau of Indian Affairs in charge of the entire state of California and all of its tribes on this issue. And he's doing amazing things. I've met with him, worked with him. He needs a lot more support from the federal government.
Yeah.
And part of the problem is this is a PL 280 state. So the federal government says, under PL 280, it's the state's responsibility. So until we can get PL 280 modernized and improved, we're going to need an all-hands approach here. State and local law enforcement need to step up and do more and partner with tribes. The feds need to provide more resources through the BIA and through the Department of Justice and other law enforcement authorities. And then I'm going to be working with colleagues for the really long term of how we fix this statute.
Yeah, it's a sad situation. So thank you for that work. Switching to the economy now, because everything is about the economy, right? I think Bill Clinton said that back in 1992.
Is the economy stupid, right?
I didn't want to go there. But on the surface, we're hearing that inflation is settling down. There seems to be a lot of positive indicators with the economy.
Yeah.
Yet we have a major creditor just downgraded our credit. And this is after all the deal making and everything that was done to raise the debt limit. And there were some, I don't want to know if, one of the things I wanted to ask you was what you thought about the deal. But there was a deal done, and part of that deal was done under the pressure that we don't want our credit rating to be raised and so, or lowered. And so that happened anyway. I guess, what do you anticipate that meaning in terms of the economy for the country? And are we out of the woods yet? And another point of that is, do Democrats need to do better messaging on the economy? Because half of the country doesn't even believe that the economy is headed in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, Democrats always need to be doing better messaging, but the challenge there, James, is we are saying all of the things we need to be saying. Half the country just never hears it.
That's information silos that are operative in every instance right now.
Right. So that is our challenge. We need to kind of push the reality of this economy against some narratives that have been cheering for recession. Republicans have been trying to run this economy into the ditch because they think it helps them politically, and they're losing. The economy is strong, and that's just the reality. The one sort of bad measure that we've had in the last couple of years, and we've had record low unemployment, we've had consistent growth. This recovery just goes on and is really sound, but inflation has been a huge challenge, and we finally got that under control. So when you think about where we've been as recently as 2 years ago, when the pandemic and the global economic collapse were really threatening us with something pretty close to a depression. It's rather remarkable that we are here now, that we've come through the worst of the inflation, that we're going to have a soft landing, which people thought was not possible.
Absolutely.
So, credit to Chairman Powell and the Fed. We don't like the interest rate increases, but it looks like they have tailored them in the way that the Fed, is supposed to do it, to bring the economy in for a landing without a recession and to bring inflation under control. So there's a lot of good news there. And of course, the investments from some of the historic legislation we've passed in the last 2 years, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and other things, CHIPS and Science Act, they are really starting to materialize in big ways, including in some red states and red districts, where they're grudgingly, coming around to understand maybe this clean energy economy is a real thing. Maybe we need to embrace it. So I just think there's a lot of good news. We always need to amplify it and explain it to the American people. We also need the American people to, maybe venture out of the echo chamber of Fox News and right-wing media to see what's really going on.
Now, about the credit rating dip, though, or the hit that the country took. Does that further underline the point that we need to get rid of this process whereby we have to go to Congress to get the debt
we certainly do.
Raised?
Yeah, we're the only serious country in the world that has that kind of a process for its issuing debt. But I think it also speaks to the fact that the debt ceiling solution that we had a few months ago was premised on a budget deal that House Republicans promptly turned around and disavowed. And since then, unfortunately, they have signaled in every possible way that a month or so from now, they're going to be shutting down the government. So if you are Moody's and other ratings agencies, how can you look at that and not say something? We're probably on our way to a government shutdown. That's not a good thing for creditworthiness and what it bodes for the next time we have to tackle the debt ceiling. So
and it makes America less of a good bet. Ultimately, if you can't trust the government to pay its bills, then it doesn't deserve a higher credit rating. So I think it seems like we need to get that taken care of.
Well, the good news is we will be paying our bills, through the next election. But it's going to be a bumpy ride with this Republican House majority because they, when they're not totally fighting with themselves in a vicious circular firing squad, they're trying to tear everything down. And, the one thing they seem to agree on is that we should probably shut the government down rather than fund it at the agreed upon level. So buckle up. It's going to be rough. Now, I'm grateful that the Senate, in a bipartisan way, is in the right place. They are honoring the budget deal that was struck. They're passing government funding bills that are not loaded up with toxic, abortion and culture war amendments.
Yeah.
The opposite's happening in the House. We're on a very bad trajectory right now.
Yeah. Switching gears again, I've asked you once before about UAPs, which are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Yeah.
And this has come, full circle or whatever. We have whistleblower David Grush, who is very serious about what he says. And interestingly, it's a bipartisan issue, and there are serious legislators on both sides of this issue in terms of thinking that something is going on. And when you have a Pentagon that hasn't passed a audit in years and years and years, and you're talking trillions of dollars of debt and the possibility of abuse, as pointed out by Ocasio-Cortez, that there's programs that are being abused and lack of accountability in terms of what private military contractors, no matter what you think about UAPs, there's an issue here. So, what do you think about the whole conversation? And I saw you grin, so I guess that's a tell.
There's a lot there. Wow. Well, first of all, I'm going to do nothing but agree on the Pentagon black hole problem. You're right. They can't pass an audit. We continue to throw bigger and bigger piles of money at them even as they fail audits. So that is a big problem. It's why I tend to vote against defense budgets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second piece is maybe one of transparency. I actually think, given the attention that this issue is getting, and given that the conspiracy theories that it's totally fueling and everybody knows how this works, we're going to have to be totally transparent. Just get it all out there, because anything short of that is going to be part of the conspiracy.
Exactly right.
So, look, do I believe there are little green men in Nevada that, we somehow recovered from an alien spacecraft crash and all this other silliness that the so-called whistleblower alluded to? That's garbage. It's absolutely false, and I'm certain of that. Let's get everything out there in an open book so that the whole world can see this is not a thing.
But there are people who are serious witnesses, people like David Fravor and the pilots that gave it that testimony, where they saw things, and They're not, though. Talk to the other folks who have looked scientifically at what they saw, and 95+% of the time can explain them. Yeah, 95%. It's the 5% that people can't explain.
So let's open it up and let everyone see. But honestly, folks, there are no little green men running around or in freezers in Nevada because of crashed alien craft. That's not a secret we could have kept all these years. It's just not a thing.
I'm not sure I agree with you on that, but that's fine, because I think that there are credible witnesses who've seen incredible things.
We're going to disagree on the word credible, and I think the more you look into this and the more we learn about it, the less the word credible is going to apply to some of these witnesses.
Okay. Recently, Speaker McCarthy and Eric Swalwell exchanged words on the floor of the House. Marjorie Taylor Greene is sharing nude photographs of the president's son, and things seem like they're especially tense, but at the same time, Biden has managed during his administration, at this time when things are so divided, to accomplish more on a bipartisan basis than any president in recent memory. Are we making progress somehow in spite of the vitriol that's in Washington, or are things as bad as they seem?
In this moment, it sure doesn't feel like progress, but I think if you back up a little bit and look at everything we were able to achieve in the last Congress, it was incredibly productive. It is paying dividends in so many ways, economically, and
you passed gun control measures.
A baby one,
but progress is important, right?
So lots of, I think, very encouraging signs of progress, but it's never a straight line to progress. There are bumps in the road and steps backward, and some of the ugliness you've referred to is absolutely a feature of this Congress, this 2-year Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. I've a couple more questions. We got about 2 minutes left. You voted against House Resolution 311, a bill that sought to basically, say that we're still close with Israel, and you had some objections to it, which I think was the first time that you had voted in that manner.
So look, I've always supported aid to Israel. I consider myself pro-Israel. The problem is that we've seen the current Israeli government, the Netanyahu coalition, really take some terrible turns.
Yeah.
on what we always have referred to as our shared values. Talking about, again, the rule of law, talking about basic democracy, talking about the human rights and living conditions of the Palestinian people and their aspirations for self-governance. Yeah. All of which this current government is just awful on. So what I took exception with with that resolution, this was just memorializing the 75th anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel, which I would ordinarily sign right on. Let's congratulate Israel, let's celebrate. But it had some loaded language in there praising the current government, which is deeply tone deaf at best when you look at what they're actually doing. The current government is a huge threat to the democracy of the State of Israel that we celebrate. It mentioned nothing about a two-state solution, which is a departure from all of the bipartisan resolutions we've always passed in the past. We always affirm our support. This time it was silent. So those two things taken together, hundreds of thousands of protesters in the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, I felt like signing on to a gaslighting resolution like that was a poke in the eye to those protesters. I couldn't do it.
Excellent. And then lastly, there's been some talk about a GOP plan. Granted, they're only one House of Congress and they're facing up against two other Democrats, but the idea is, I guess, basically that if you're under 50, your benefits for Social Security would be cut. What are the chances of that passing the House? And I mean, are we secure enough with the rest of our government to keep that from happening, do you think?
Look, I think we'll keep it from happening. I don't want anybody who's in that age range to worry about losing Social Security or Medicare benefits. But this keeps coming around. It's just one of these things where, most Republicans would never want to go there, but there is a significant block of particularly the House Republicans, and also in the Senate. Tim Scott, he's a big fan of pretty structural cuts. And it's the kind of thing where they're going to keep trying. They're going to keep making runs at Medicare and Social Security, and we're just going to have to keep re-winning the fights that we won all those years ago from, the 30s and the 60s specifically. Sometimes you got to keep re-winning big victories. Yeah, and that's maybe the kind of victory that the Democrats would like in terms of electoral politics. Well, the people are with us on this. These are very popular programs. Absolutely. That's all we got. All right, thank you for having me. Yeah, no problem. We'll be right back after this short break.
Friends and supporters of KEET TV, we are calling all who have a passion for public television on the North Coast. KEET is looking for a diverse group of people to join its Community Advisory Board, or CAB. CAB members play an advising role to management and act as KEET's ambassadors within the community. Meetings are held quarterly on Zoom. Go to KEET.org, find the link for CAB, and get involved today. We look forward to meeting you.
A blue-collar revival could soon sweep Humboldt County. Within a decade, two companies plan to float up to 150 turbines 20 miles west of Eureka. To supply gear for those wind energy farms, the Humboldt Bay Harbor District is industrializing the Samoa Peninsula. Headline Humboldt's Eric Black reports.
Blue-collar workers are struggling.
The biggest export we have out of Humboldt County is our children. All of my children had to go out and go to work someplace else.
In order for me to find work right now, I have to leave out of town. I got 3 kids at home. Sometimes I'll come home a weekend a month.
Jason Schenkerberg could potentially stay home if redevelopment rekindles jobs extinguished during the timber flameout. The Harbor District and its private partner Crowley Wind Services plan to revive 180 acres that formerly produced wood products. Looking south from the Samoa Bridge, they'll remove these docks, build a heavy lift wind terminal, and headquarters for turbine maintenance, assembly, and possibly manufacturing.
It's likely that in the early stages, we will receive more of the manufactured products from abroad than in the later stages. So this industry needs to be built from scratch. Japan is way ahead of us. There's a number of countries in Asia that are already manufacturing these components.
So here you can see blades being moved by train. These are small blades because you can't get much larger and move them by train. You can get bigger and move them by truck, but even that becomes challenging. And this blade here is less than half the size of the planned offshore wind turbines. So the only way to move them is by ship. which means that they have to be manufactured in a port. Because you can't move them across the land and they have to be moved by ship, then they'll have to be manufactured next to ships in ports.
San Francisco, let's just say they've got 60 acres to do pre-assembly. We have tugs, we have barges, that's what we do today, that could ship those components from that area in San Francisco up here, and then we can help do the construction.
That construction entails attaching blades to the hub and stacking the apparatus on top of towers. Crowley will oversee erecting those towers piecemeal at the wharf. Boats will tug the turbines to sea standing up. Turbine assembly cannot occur in the Bay Area because the erect turbines would slam into the Golden Gate Bridge. The feds already dredge a deep, wide Humboldt Bay entrance. Our port is close to and can supply equipment for Humboldt's wind farm, along with the planned Oregon wind energy farms. Humboldt's workers could also service potential farms off the Del Norte and Mendocino coasts. Those locations boast the U.S.'s most frequent high winds.
You've got a lot of ships that are going to have to go out to these turbines. People are going to have to get up onto the pontoons and the floaters and maintain all of this. There's probably going to be new helicopter pilots, a lot of technicians, drone pilots, and there'll be a whole lot of people working to inspect this equipment. And then a lot of it is underwater, so there will likely be jobs related to diving and driving submarine drones to inspect lines and the floaters.
Employment optimism abounded in April. The Harbor District celebrated its partnership with Crowley to develop the port. But good vibes turned rancid when an employee sued Crowley for ignoring her complaint that a supervisor had sexually assaulted her. Instead, Crowley allegedly required the victim to travel with her boss, who then allegedly raped her. In response, the company wrote, quote, "While we take allegations of sexual assault seriously, we will vigorously defend ourselves against the lawsuit." With trust in Crowley cracking, in July, blue-collar workers demanded guarantees.
It needs to have strong protection for local workers. We have a robust workforce here, and we need protection to make sure that the local folks have a good shot at this.
It's unclear whether Crowley will guarantee local hiring. Regardless, until August 25th, the Harbor District is soliciting public guidance on how to analyze the wind terminal's environmental impact. That impact could include a 2.0 revival of Humboldt's blue-collar glory days. Eric Black, Headline Humboldt, Samoa.
Beautiful package put together by Eric. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Remember to catch our new UAP-centered YouTube channel at Neon Galactic, where just today we've posted a new interview with retired Navy Senior Chief Kevin Day, who was intimately involved with the Nimitz sighting of UAPs in 2004 in the Pacific Ocean. Stay tuned, stay informed.